That reminds me. All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, May 10th. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as we look at our agenda, are there any adjustments or changes to our agenda this morning? Any adjustments or changes? If not, I'd take a motion to approve our agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Svallesen. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. So we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, at this point in time, we have our public comment period. It's an opportunity for our citizens to appear before the county board. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak this morning? Yes, welcome. Come up to the microphone.
We'll be on the agenda later.
Oh, okay.
So,
Roughly what, I know it's.
this is, I don't see it as going very long, be a few minutes, but that you could speak, but there may be questions, and I think you're probably valuable for the questions that would come up to stick
All
around.
right. Very good.
Yeah.
Administrator Yorkie, do you have any written comments that have been sent to you?
Madam Chair, I've received none.
All
Thank you.
right. Given that, we will move on to our consent agenda items. And is there an item anyone would like to pull? Any items to pull?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve our consent agenda. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Svallesen. We have a motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are on to our Soil, Water, and Conservation District. And is Amanda going to be with us?
I thought she would be, but perhaps we should move on to the next item, and perhaps she'll be here in the meantime.
There she is, right on time.
Well, that's not awkward.
Welcome.
Good morning, Madam
Good
Chair.
morning, Amanda.
Fellow Commissioners. All right, I am here about this boundary water sign for AIS prevention. So I've been working with the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness Area Committee. It has members from St. Louis County, Lake County, and up in Ely. So this is the sign that the committee has established or developed, and it has the logos from Wildlife Forever, Forest Service, us, if it's approved, St. Louis County, Lake County, and then the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers logo. And it's been approved by the DNR Ecological Water Resources Board and by the Forest Service Program Manager for the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness Area. And so the signs would be placed at West Bearskin, Brule, Clearwater, McFarland, Saginaw, Sawbill, Seagull, entry points.
All right, well, we know they're all covered with ice, but it will be very soon when we will want to have signage up there. Any questions or discussion for Amanda? I know I'd just like to thank you for the good article in the Cook County News Herald. Really clearly talked about, how we can prevent invasive species from getting into our waters. We're fortunate, we're better off than the rest of the state, but this signage will help to even prevent further spread. So I appreciate your efforts in that area.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like the motion to approve the design and placement of the Boundary Water Canoe Area Wilderness AIS signs and approve the Cook County logo on the signs.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Svallesen. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you,
Storley. So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
And now on to Human Resources. Leah Ekstrom is going to come forward and talk a little bit about a job description.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm coming before you asking for approval for the Public Health and Human Services Ship Coordinator, Public Health Educator job description. The description is attached. This has gone through the Personnel Committee as well as the Classification Committee and came back with a pay grade of 170. This would be a part-time position, and I apologize for not including this, but it is a grant, 100% grant-funded position that is part-time. So, and if anyone has any questions or, no.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Yes, thank you for clarifying, because
Yes.
I was thinking this was part-time, but it doesn't say it in the job description. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, actually, and we don't typically include full or part-time in a job description. We would include that in a posting as well as in budget accommodations. We like the job descriptions to stay as neutral as possible for that reason, just in case they do need to be adjusted. The duties don't necessarily change due to full or part-time.
So you said fully funded. What is the grant amount?
Actually, to be perfectly honest, I don't know the full grant amount, but I can inquire that for you.
So that's, I'm wondering as far as how you're going to, are you saying this position 100%, because last year we hired a public health educator and it was $83,000
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying this is going to turn in, one of those positions is turning into this position and it's fully funded, or is this a new position?
This is a new position that is
In
part-time, that is the SHIP position that is grant-funded. Historically, it was located up at the clinic through Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, but worked very closely and pretty much under the supervision of the public health, Grace Grenager. So now it is moving, sorry.
And so in that sense, it's a new position for the county. It's moving over to the county, but it's not a
Yes.
new position in the community.
Correct.
And, Madam Chair, the county, the grant has always been received by the county and contracted through the
Correct.
clinic.
Correct.
So there's really no change in anything aside from direct oversight versus, and where the office is.
And where,
Yeah.
which, and I think we're all very excited that this is going to be at the community center. That's a great piece of collaboration.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. All right. Other questions or comments?
Well, I appreciate your work on this, but I guess I am going to say I'm not going to support this the way it is written. We previously contracted with Sawtooth Mountain Clinic because we did not have a fully staffed public health department. We have added 2 positions to that department. Last year in June, 3 of us commissioners voted against that new position, but it went forward anyway, and now we're adding another. My sense why we did the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic contracts was because we did not have enough staff to provide the service. Well, now we have staff, and now we're still adding staff. And I just don't think in this time of climate change with finances, I would like to see it be incorporated into the current and not a 3rd position created. So that's my stance.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, there was a lot there, and I don't fully understand. And I just want that to be out there. I don't know that I will fully understand, and I like to. And I just, this is basically an administrative change. It's not any anything else. And I guess I don't understand why you would vote against it. I feel like that'd be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Oh, I want it to happen. I think it should happen within our current framework and structure of the public health department.
Do more with less.
We have added 2 positions. One we added last year because of pandemic related. Well, there's less work to do with the pandemic right now in public health. Yes, I think that person in that department, maybe they can rearrange and assign duties differently instead of having to hire another person to do the work.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure that there's less to do right now with the pandemic. And, yeah, I think there's a couple assumptions there that are inaccurate, and that's unfortunate, but I guess that's another discussion, so, agree to disagree.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Storley.
It isn't totally on public health here. They're sharing it with the clinic. So isn't that what it says here?
Historically, it was with
Yeah.
the clinic,
Yeah.
and now it is moving outside of the clinic into the public health department.
Correct.
All right, okay.
Apologize
So-
if
It is
that wasn't
fully
clear.
grant funded.
And it's, the money will come to take care of the position?
Mhm.
You're
Yep,
not
it's-
sure yet how much?
No, it is $43,637 annually that's
Oh,
received
okay.
from the state, the Minnesota
Okay.
Department of Health.
And this will hopefully come in then, each year this contract is viable, and they're going to be at the community center.
Correct. They are working closely with the extension up at the community center.
So they'll create a little office there?
They are, they're
A
working on,
corner?
they're working on rearranging some of the space
Yeah.
up there, which
Okay,
probably could be done anyways.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's a better place for folks to come and meet with? the
It is, with the
coordinator?
programming that Extension is working on, and Sarah Waddle up the family-focused community health, it just seemed like a great partnership and place for that person to be. And public health is up there often right now, with, where, maybe not as much anymore, but with testing and vaccinations, and they utilize that space.
Other questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the Public Health Human Services SHIP Coordinator / Public Health Educator job description and pay grade of 170.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalis, and we have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I just, the SHIP monies comes through the CHB, and so I have more perspective as well, just with the goings-ons through that, and I see real advantages to shifting this position directly under public health, as far as clear communication and coordination. We did a fine job coordinating throughout the pandemic between all of our organizations, but I think we saw room to create greater efficiency. And that's where I think this is really going to come through, especially as our community center is going through new leadership and some development and changes. I think there's just a whole lot of synergy that's going to be able to happen with this. So I just want to point that out. Thank you for your work on it, Leah. And yeah, I'm just really excited.
Any other comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, Madam Chair, that was the further discussion.
We have a motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I apologize. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to approve a work order with RSNH to do the project, the master planning project and ALP update, as has been designed and approved by the FAA. This is if you approve this, this is going to be subject to actually receiving the grant, so they're going to happen at about the same time. So they'd like us to approve it subject to, because it's likely to come in before another meeting, and then we would be prepared to then sign it and send it, and they can keep the project moving.
Well, it's a very lengthy document.
Yeah, they've really just attached the entire scope of services that they worked out for this master planning document. I mean, it's a 20-year planning document. Similar in some ways to the CIP we're planning, is that it sets the stage for the next 20 years of projects up there, so.
Any questions for Auditor Powers?
Madam Chair, the only question I have, Brady, is there anything in here we should be aware of right now in terms of process, what's happening with people coming forward to work on this? Or is this a 20-year thing that we're going to review maybe every year?
Yeah, why the scope of services is attached is that the design engineer firm, RS&H, will do all of the work, or they may sub some parts of it out. I'm not sure of that, but it's really all them, which is why it's all attached under their work order. It's unusual. Usually they just do the design, they might do the construction management, but they do the entirety. But some things like there has to be a survey done, of course, that'll be hired out. But most of the work, the design, et cetera, will be directly on them.
So the federal grant is 90% covering the cost?
Yeah, and we hadn't gotten any confirmation that the state would, but when the state did, there's a form that has to be approved, SF, I can't remember the number of it, but the state filled that out for the FAA, and they put in a 5%. So somebody who did the application was making the assumption that they would, but that's not a guarantee, so we're still hoping.
Okay,
I can just state that the Airport Commission, and in particular, John Barton, has worked very hard on this, and it's about our future, the future of our county, and I'm really impressed with all the time and effort that has gone into this, and RS&H was awarded this contract because of the fact that they do excellent work, and so I'm really excited to be able to move one more step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It is a long process working with the FAA. Any other questions? Commissioner Mills?
And I'm, again, just really excited about this item as well. This is a really big deal for the airport and our community, to have this kind of planning done and looked at, and to have it covered by outside agencies, I think is very powerful too. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of positive going on. So thank you for the long hours you put in on this. I'm hoping it'll come to good things.
I'm confident it will. All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the work order for RS&H to the Airport Master Plan Study.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the next item is a proposal for a tennis court coating system. I ask Patrick O'Neill to come forward. He's with the Tennis Association. He was kind of handed off. I think Rod Wannabu was leading this effort in the last couple of years, at least from, with us.
Many, many decades, yes.
Yeah, many decades.
And he's still helping, and it's much needed, so.
He's passed off the public portion of this to us, so. Do you want to just make some comments first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
first, I saw it says resurfacing. It is a reconstruction, which is a bigger deal. A resurface just implies that you just kind of coat and then paint over. This is a full-on new membrane system, similar in nature to what we have at the other two. And it's just really good for the community up here because we have a big safety risk with the amount of cracks going across there. Not only is it annoying when your ball hits it and goes off to the side, but, you know, even last year, had some of that loose tar. I went sliding on one of them and it's like, okay, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
If we had the funds of, you know, like the cities, you know, they're doing it every 6-7 years. They're reconstructing and making sure it's redone, and we're on year, I believe, 12 or 13 going into this. So these courts have served their purposes. The proposed surface that we're using was installed in Quebec back in 2016 in an outdoor court, similar harsh environment. And they say the cracks that are currently there are still minimal to none, and actually it's a very good surface for them. So I think we found kind of the best solution until hopefully one day we can put post-tension concrete in, but that is down the road kind of a deal. I guess I'll leave it back to you.
Yeah, so we've looked at a couple of methods for achieving this, and one was going with this Fred Kolkman, who actually, you've approved his review and preparation, a review of the courts, you know, how flat are they, how much preparation work do they need, et cetera, and you saw the results of that. And then he also put out design work that he would oversee, so that was an option, and then to go out for bids, quotes, et cetera, under any surface. We've used him in the past. But in the meantime, I don't know who discovered, maybe Rod and
Yeah.
you guys together, this other system that they're using in other courts. USDA uses it in some surfaces, I guess. It's much less expensive than the Pro Bounce we used before, and we found it's through an outfit called Sourcewell, which is very similar to the state contracting. They are a state authorized agency, and if you go through their process and get authorized, then you have met all those conditions, like we could buy a car off a state contract price, and it's already been bid. And this doesn't require bidding because the price is so low, but we would get quotes, et cetera. I mean, it's less than $175,000, so you could presumably do it anyway, just with quotes. But nevertheless, they've done the quote, et cetera. The outfit that they've been talking to and that I've been talking to is from Minneapolis, UMA, Upper Midwest Athletics, and they are approved for Sourcewell. The other question in my mind was, well, what about installation? It includes installation. When they quote it, they quote all aspects of it, including preparation, installation. The whole works is in those voluminous, I think I attached some of the documentation there. But it goes into great detail, and it's a not-to-exceed price, so they could offer you something less, but not to exceed under that contract. So there could, we always have these, let's see, not uncertainties, but exactly how to contract in the end for something like this, because they're small projects, et cetera. So how we actually do it, I think Molly will weigh in on this too. They've given us a quote, a proposal, which you might approve today, but you know, what other contract terms might we want? We'll have to look at what actually comes with Sourcewell. Do we want to add insurance terms and things like that? So we would do that, you know, of course. And then the other aspect is sources of funds. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Outside sources of funds. We have funds of our own, but.
Thank you.
We can share.
Yep, no, we can share.
Thanks.
I'll turn it back.
Actually, I should probably have one.
Your pickle in the middle.
So, there's been a huge community effort around funding for this, and there has been in the years past as well, too. So we are the Cook County Tennis Association, and as it stands now, we are encroaching upon $10,000 that we will put forward through this, and this is purely just from members of the public coming forward and being helpful. We just secured a grant from USTA Northern for $15,000, and depending on, we just have to show how we're going to maintain them over the next 7-8 years. And as long as we can prove that we are going to put a good faith effort in making sure they're playable, good sources, they are even going to entertain a grant match option as well too. So the 10,000 that is coming from us may have the potential to be a larger number as well too. So that's something I have to ask about that with the community down the road type of a deal. So there might be more money on the table, which would be fantastic. The Lloyd K. Johnson, we are in the short window, unfortunately, so we are only able to hopefully get the 3,500. We are in the process of that application. The IRRB, they are aware that we have asked for this in the past. They have been some fantastic donors, upwards of $50,000 for the reconstruction, and I think that was, if you look to the next page here, that was the 2009 when we reconstructed these courts as well. So we're optimistic we can get some funds from them. But we did lose our individual that had a good tie to Cook County, and that is unfortunate. So we don't know where we stand necessarily with that one. The city, they benefit from the courts, so we are hoping to secure similar funds as the, I apologize for going back and forth here, but the 2015 reconstruction of the other two courts. Hopefully they're able to give us a little bit more. But due to the fact of this new technology, new meaning 7, 8, 9 years old, and the USTA uses it and Quebec uses it, it costs a lot less to procure and create. So the overhead cost is significantly less on our end of things. So although it looks like we're asking more compared to the last time we asked for money for this, and the Cook County courts, it's 3 courts versus 2 courts. And so that's why you might notice only a $10,000 difference from the year, $15,000 difference from the year prior. So.
Well, thank you. That was a very helpful explanation.
Yep.
So any questions? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Thank you for the information here. So I'm visioning reconstruction, meaning you're going to tear everything out and put something new in?
That would be significantly more costly. What we utilize with this membrane surface is they go through, and with the report that Kolkman made, he was able to identify the highs and the lows. If everything comes through, and this Eric Hicks, who is through the Upper Midwest Association, he'll come through, he'll go, okay, looks good. We're able to just secure the membrane to the perimeter, and then it's very quick, and they don't do a lot of tearing up outside of regrouting and routering out some of the cracks to make level. So in terms of the invasiveness, pretty minimal, and we shouldn't have to impact the actual foundation of the courts. But I just sent him another text message saying, if in the event that it does all of a sudden look like you have to go beyond, we're waiting on his response if that would be extended or not. But that is an unknown.
Mm-hmm. So it would secure it for a few more years, basically?
I'm sorry, can you?
Would secure the base of the tennis courts for a few more years by doing it this way?
Correct. Hopefully, and there's never a guarantee. You could have a crazy winter with thaws and whatnot as well, too. The goal would be the life of this makes about 12 years, which is well beyond the 7 traditional years that you'd get in southern climates. The ultimate goal is we get to a threshold where I'm not in here for 50 years. And that is a post-tension concrete, but that is significantly more money at that point. So that is, you will see me in the future proposing to plan for that, so. But
This would be done so that the tennis season could take place this summer?
fingers crossed, if we can get the bid in and he's able to commit, yes.
Okay.
We might get a month.
Okay. thank
Yeah,
you.
that's part of the reason for bringing it today, even though, you can see some of the things are not certain, the funding, et cetera, is whether we should at least have a tentative approval, because then you could possibly get it scheduled in July, early August, which that's the best time to do, I guess, any of these surfaces, so that they stick for the longest period of time. Otherwise, you might end up going for another year.
And I would like to bring up that the safety is a big deal, considering our average population of individuals out there playing is anywhere from 50 to 90 years old. So,
Little liability.
little liability.
Commissioner Mills.
So can you remind us of the difference between the cost-wise of the Pro Bounce and this? And I'm sorry, the name of this is the system, this technology. What
Yes, Lake Hold Master 8 float. You can just say Lake Hold.
Not as easy as Pro Bounce.
Not as easy as Pro Bounce, no.
Okay.
Pro Bounce, oh gosh, I'd have to look at my phone. I apologize for not putting that on there. But it was about 2,000, anywhere from 217 to 220,000.
Okay.
And post-tension concrete is about 300 to 500,000, depending on how it's installed.
Figure that will come under the capital improvement
Yeah.
planning.
Right.
When it's
Yeah.
big enough to,
Yeah.
it needs to be prioritized over.
And, oh, sorry.
No.
You go ahead.
The reason we did choose the lake hold is we were a little nervous at the beginning of it because it has only, it's well known in the USTA facilities, and that's what they use for like the US Open. But because Quebec did install this in 2016 and 2018, and their success with it, and they spoke highly of it, and they're based out of Wisconsin, we were more on board with going this route. And actually, if you look at this last year was a bad winter for the Pro Bounce courts. We had some cracks make their appearance that weren't there last year, which is unfortunate. But so it's currently, based off of their courts, doing better than our Pro Bounce courts.
That was actually my question, is it how much experience? Because before we installed the Pro Bounce, I remember hearing good reviews of that, and yes, we've played on it, and it's good or whatever, and so that's what I was curious. And you say Lake Hold?
Lake Hold, yes.
Yeah.
I think they're out of La Crosse.
And, yeah, that's why I was curious about that, but I guess we're going to have to go off of anecdotes, but
Correct.
but positive ones.
Yes.
Administrator York.
That's right. You're promoting me again. So I recall I was at the courts last fall looking at both the back courts, which, as you say, are in horrible shape, and it is a liability. But I was also looking at the newer courts, the two in front, and I noticed there was like a hairline crack already. So you're saying there are more cracks now.
Correct, but
And-
they're playable and safe.
They're
is the big
like
difference.
hairline, pretty
Yes.
much. Yeah.
The difference in these floating systems, that's what Pro Bounce is as well too, versus the asphalt systems, which is the 3 courts currently, is the frost will make a bigger impact on it versus the Pro Bounce has a layer of, for lack of better terminology, astroturf underneath it that allows it to float and is able to give a little bit more. This will have a similar multi-layered membrane and sand kind of a function to allow for more give, so you should only get smaller cracks. But again, you can't predict everything with complete certainty.
Thanks.
Here's
Commissioner
one.
Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One bigger question is, so if they're using this system for the US Open, why would we want post-tension concrete?
For our climate, the U.S. Open will resurface and reconstruct these every year.
Okay. There you go. Say no more.
I like the idea of the reconstruction and thinking 12 years
Yes.
before we do anything.
And the post-tension will survive upwards of 30-plus years. And so all they do is they resurface, which is the difference in reconstruct versus resurface. So that is my goal of doing less work with you guys.
All right. Well, thank you. Good questions. Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
And Molly, would you, would we want the motion to include final approval of contract terms with the county attorney and, or bring it back? Or,
Well, I mean, I would prefer to bring it back if it's not messing up any timelines related to the construction or to the grant funds.
yeah.
So, I mean, the board could preliminarily approve,
He-
approve it
Yeah.
conditioned on final approval of county administrator and county attorney.
And then he could probably go ahead and, it's just him scheduling it before, in the timeline, he could maybe do a tentative schedule subject to the final terms.
So I'm interested in what your timeline would be and when you would need this contract so that I can,
Eric more or less needs to know 2 months ago.
okay.
We were competing against the cities, which have a longer season to implement these courts. So he understands that, and they're able to try to finagle us into, it's going to take about a week, week and a half to at the most, assuming we have good weather. So
So is the board's motion approving a contract enough for them, or do they need an executed
I
contract?
believe I can't see with complete certainty, but I believe it's the latter.
And I saw I see what you've included in the packet. Is there a proposed contract that they would have, that they would like to work with, or do they want us to draft it up?
I believe it's through Sourcewell, but that's a fantastic question. I don't know.
Yeah. Whether there's anything, yeah, there is some kind of contract there.
Okay.
Whether we want to add, if we need to add something to it, is insurance enough? I'm not sure about some of those aspects.
So I believe what we're looking for then is a motion to provide preliminary approval with final approval of the contract based on the terms being adequate for the county attorney. All right. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion, we have support. Any further discussion?
I
Commissioner
just
Hawkins.
want to make sure I clarify. Yeah, I get we need to get this done so we can have good tennis courts for the summer. But are we designating how much is coming from the county, or are we just covering the whole cost, or? How does that work?
Good
For
question.
the motion, as far.
Yeah.
I believe through the county, you guys set aside $7,500 per year for this purpose. Combined with the secured funds and hopeful the proposal funds, I believe it still falls within the actual allocated proposed cost of the whole thing. So worst case scenario, all of the money magically disappears, which does not because we secured it, but you would be the full cost of it, and it would still fall within that since the 2009, I believe, timeframe.
So we have all the funds we've discussed in the past, what we've levied in the building fund, what we've set aside in the building fund, levied in the building fund, and the USTA Northern funds, the Cook County Tennis Association funds. So that's what we know right now, which is more than sufficient to cover it, and then we hope to secure other funding so that we don't have to use all of that.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Good
And so,
question.
yeah, and so when you get these other funds, they're going to go back into the building fund where this came out of, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure I understand how this is working,
Yeah.
thanks.
That's good.
Yeah,
Commissioner Mills.
ultimately, it's the county's court, so we are responsible for it, but any money we can get that's not from the levy would be awesome. So thank you for your efforts
Yeah.
on that
Here to
front,
make
too.
you guys' lives easier.
Yes,
so.
thank you, appreciate that.
Well, we have a motion and support. Any other further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right. Administrator Yorkie.
Wow. 40 minutes into this meeting, and we're already to my section. That's,
Let's go.
I know, okay, we can do this in 5 minutes now. Actually, since we do have time, I actually wanted to start even before where we are now and go back a little bit to provide some context for the thought process that went into recommending CRBPS as the contractor for this project. And I think probably a lot of folks who are listening, if any are, will remember the previous capital improvement plan development process, which occurred in 2017, 2018. Those plans included a new jail and a little further down the road, either a new public health and human services building or an administrative general services building. And there was a financial management plan that included bonding for those facilities. I guess the process, as I understand it, and I wasn't here, but the process for the development of that CIP was fairly closed. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for the public to be informed about the assumptions and the data that were going into the development of that plan. And so when the plan was more or less completed, it was presented to the public, and I think a lot of people were caught off guard by it. And there were a lot of questions about where are these data coming from? Are they valid? And particularly in regard to the proposed jail expansion, there was a lot of controversy, and I'm sure you all remember that. And there were also concerns about the consultant responsible for the development of that CIP potentially benefiting from project work that would come out of it. And so all of those things kind of brought that whole process to a halt. People were not happy with the process. And there were some very legitimate questions about the need for a new jail. And so that kind of stopped things in its tracks. And then not too long after that, the previous administrator left, and then we had a pandemic. So a lot going on in the interim period. And so we are now at a point where we need to update this plan. We know that the information in that plan, some of it is still usable, a lot of it is outdated, and we know that there are incorrect assumptions that were part of that plan, particularly in regard to population growth, which now has exceeded what was projected for 2040. And we are still in a phase of growth where there are more people moving to the county. And I don't have a crystal ball. I wouldn't try to predict how long that growth is going to continue, whether it's going to accelerate, decelerate, et cetera. But we know that we're in a different place than we were when the last plan was developed. So there is a need to update it. And to address that need, we issued a request for proposals in January. We sent that out to 14 firms across the state. We got 5 responses, and we engaged our Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee in reviewing those proposals. And in fact, I just want to recognize the great work that committee does, because they have been a great sounding board for us. Let's see, and I'm going to try to remember. The members are Jim Boyd, Hillary Freeman, Mike Carlson, Liz Wagner, and there's someone else.
Did you say Mike Carlson?
I didn't say Mike Carlson. Well, somebody will help me remember it.
All right.
Anyway,
No.
he's not on
No,
it.
Randy Knudsen.
Oh, Randy.
Oh, Randy Knudsen. How could I forget Randy? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Randy, I'm sorry. Anyway, so they have been just really a great sounding board. They put a lot of time into reviewing the proposals. And I just want to say the proposals that we got were all generally of a very high quality. There were a couple that rose to the top. And And I want to say, too, it was interesting, the pricing on these proposals was kind of all over the place, which was confusing for us. And so we did do some follow-up to understand better what the responding firms' assumptions were in terms of the work involved in doing this. But anyway, so we had 5 proposals, and I just want to kind of briefly go over the criteria that we used to score these proposals, because it's important. The biggest criterion was thoroughness, clarity, and attention to detail. That was worth 20 points, and these are out of 100 points total. 20 points for that. We had a focus on sustainability, so does the responding firm have a track record that demonstrates a commitment to resource efficiency and providing long-term value? And that's really important because our decision-making in the past in regard to county buildings has been very focused on short-term costs. And there's always an impetus to look at first costs, and that needs to be part of the consideration. But when you do that to the exclusion of looking at longer-term costs, you end up in a bad place. And you end up having much higher longer-term operating costs than you would if you'd taken those longer-term issues like energy usage and so on into account. So sustainability was a big factor. Another big factor, that was 15 points, I should mention. Also worth 15 points was experience working the public sector and developing capital improvement plans. That was 15 points as well. Quality of deliverables was worth 10 points. We also had a criterion for innovation. That was 10 points. The capacity of the firm to do the work. Are they a large firm, small firm? Do they have the resources to do the work themselves? Would they have to rely on partner firms to do the project? That was another factor. And then cost, of course, was also a factor. That was worth 10 points. And then there were other factors which were at the discretion of the person doing the scoring. So any other aspects of the application that were noteworthy and that warranted adding additional points. So we scored all 5 proposals. The members of the Budget and Advisory Committee provided their scores. We averaged those out, and the 2 firms who had the highest scores were Krauss Anderson and CRBPS. Interestingly, the costs that each firm submitted were quite different. So Krauss Anderson, let's see. Now this is not what I recall from the proposal. Sorry, I entered this into a spreadsheet and it looks like, let me just confirm that number. In any case, so we had different pricing. Some of the lowest proposal, for example, was $20,000, which is 1/10 of the proposal that's being recommended for funding.
Yeah, I think Kraus was 40.
That's what I want to say. Yeah. Yeah, you're correct. $40,000. And then we had one that was as high as $354,000. So again, they were all kind of all over the map. So we did some follow-up to understand what was included in each proposal, and we also had members of the Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee interview both firms. And so that was really instructive to us. The takeaway from those interviews was that both firms were in fact very well qualified to do the work. CRBPS was very clear that its intention was to help us develop this plan, but not be a contractor at the back end of the project. Where Krauss Anderson was very candid that, yes, we'll help you develop the plan, and we'd also like to be considered for doing any projects that might come out of this, which I have to say I appreciated their candor in that. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, and so I'm glad that they were honest about their approach, but knowing that one of the public's concerns last time was that the firm would be benefiting from the outcome of the plan, gave the committee members this time some pause. And so So in the end, there was consensus that it would be better to go with CRBPS. At that point, I followed up with the firm to understand the cost proposal and to develop some options for implementation that could reduce the first-year cost. The options that we discussed, excuse me, are appended to this agenda item. There are different ways that you can slice and dice this. Option 1 is to do the whole thing in one fell swoop. Option 2 would be to do the 2 different tasks that make up the core of the plan in different years, so that they would be doing building assessments this year and actually developing the CIP next year. The downside of that was that it would take longer for us to actually get to the finish line and have a plan that we could work with. And then there were other ways of kind of breaking out certain components of buildings, looking at mechanical systems or building envelope or just roofs, for example. But neither of the latter 2 options, or the last 2 options, were really optimal in terms of providing us with actionable information that we could use to get the work underway. And so the consensus, and I didn't recognize, of course, the 2 commissioners who are liaison to this group and who are also very active in evaluating proposals and providing feedback, and those are Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Hawkins. So thank you, both of you, for your work on this. So the recommendation from the committee, there was consensus to go, well, actually, one person felt that option 2 or possibly 3 or 4 would be better, but the majority of committee members recommended that we go with option 1, which is just to get this thing done this year. If we do that, we will have an updated CIP by the end of 2022. The other thing that I want to say that's really important about how we're going to do this project is that I anticipate lots of opportunities for the public to weigh in as we're developing the plan. So that as we get information about population projections, about space needs, whatever recommendations are coming out of this study, whatever data we're using to develop those recommendations, that people have a chance to review that as we're developing it, so that we don't end up with a final plan that nobody has seen and nobody understands. I think that's going to be a really important approach to take in this case. And so that is kind of where we are right now. And so the request this morning is to authorize me to contract with CRBPS to do the capital improvement plan. This, of course, would be contingent on the county attorney's review of that contract. And given our previous discussion, I don't know if there'd be a need or a benefit to come back for a separate approval of that contract. We could do it that way. But that is certainly at your discretion.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Svolleson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one other element that was missing from the previous plan that had been put together, it didn't really factor in all of the current maintenance, capital maintenance needs of our county buildings. Mm-hmm. And really that was part of what gave the public pause of, you have plans here based on analysis for things that need to be done future looking. And of course it's important. I mean, you got to have a plan and lay it out so you can determine what your needs are. But that element to me was very, very important. And from our commissioner tours of our facilities, we saw the need, right? And some of those, if you started to stack them up, you started to say, how are we going to pay for all of this, right? So that was a big piece that I was looking for with this that I think really sets it apart and allows this board to be able to look at it with a much clearer vision of, these are our current needs, these are what we see for maintaining the current structures as we go forward, with plans based on our projections of what we see in the future. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really a huge piece of this, to be able to maintain it. Having it be able to be done sooner rather than later, I think is very, very important. I think it's had been hard for me, as we've set our budget projections and things, to know exactly, I mean, I really do trust the people that are coming in and talking before us and our employees that are looking at this and saying, we've looked at it and I think these are our needs. But it's a lot easier if you've had all of that put together, because generally the needs that are being brought forward are those, the urgent, that it's like, this is way past due.
Yeah.
We don't want it way past due. We want to be able to look ahead, see what's coming, factor these things in. You'll always have surprises, but you'd like to minimize those by factoring them in, like you said, with the life cycle management for any new projects, but life cycle management as best you can based on today's analysis. And this product is what's going to give us that, I believe,
Yeah.
through that analysis. And that's why, David, I'll use your term, I'm really excited about seeing this. Well, I really am.
It's contagious.
No, I really am excited about seeing this type of product, because having worked with one in the past, you feel, you know, like something's missing when you want to give full-throated endorsement of something that costs a lot of money. The closest thing we have to this is what our highway maintenance department has done. And so that's my one caution I would say is, we moved forward with a new cold storage building because we saw it. The need was very, very clear to us and such. But ensure that as we're going through that what their current plan for equipment and things doesn't get disrupted, because a lot of hard work went into developing that, you know, to be able to lay that out for us. But it does need to get put in because it's all county funds. But yeah, but very good. We've seen what a good plan can look like, and if we can take that and expand it out and then look into the future, I'm really excited about that.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sollison. Commissioner Mills?
That was really well said. I really appreciate that, your thoughts there. I agree 100% there. I did have a question for Administrator Yorkie, just about the member of the committee that was thinking more about the other options, and I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that thought.
Yeah. I think, Commissioner, the reservation was based on the experience of the last CIP development, and the thought that, spending all this money up front to get the plan
Right.
done in one fell swoop
Right.
might be off-putting to some
Yep.
members of the public.
Oh, yeah,
It was
it's-
not at all about the qualifications of the firm.
Sure.
Or the proposed approach.
Yeah, it's the immediate cost.
Right.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
That's nothing to sneeze at.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Well, thank you to Administrator Yorkie and the committee and the commissioners and everybody for working on this. It does take a great deal of thought about priorities, and last time we kind of missed the boat there. We just zeroed in on one thing, and now things are evidently kind of getting more dire in some of the areas. We opened it up for public to go view, the jail and all kinds of things, so maybe that needs to be done again if that's part of the plan, but involving the public and being honest and forward with what's going to happen. And I think this group is great in their presentation of how they're going to work with us now, but also to work a little bit in the future, too. Once we develop a plan, they'll still be available to have some consulting with them, which is important,
Yeah.
and help us kind of sort things out.
The other thing that I didn't mention is that, of course, we have already used CRBPS for the improvements at the YMCA that occurred after the pandemic first started. They did excellent work for us, and they really,
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
yeah,
That's
yeah, they did
helpful.
excellent work for us, and they also addressed some major performance problems
Yeah.
with that building, which again, there's a huge cost savings in doing that.
Yes, sir.
And that's really, I think, one of the key points to drive home is that, it costs money to do the study up front. I think the savings to the county over the coming years and decades will far, far exceed what the study's going to cost. And I think we need to develop a longer-term perspective in how we invest in and manage buildings. And then I also was going to mention, Commissioner Hawkins, you had gotten some feedback too from Arrowhead Regional Corrections that they had worked with CRBPS and had really, really positive things to say. So you know, we've talked to other folks who've used this company, and based on our own experience and the recommendations that we've gotten, we feel very, very comfortable working with these guys.
Commissioner Mills?
The city also has used CRBPS while I was city councilor and had positive experience. They're getting a comprehensive picture of City Hall, which is a very interesting building. So I can vouch for them on that project.
Commissioner Solison?
The one thing I think we haven't said outright that we should, how are we going to make the payment on this? Where's it coming from?
That's kind of important. So this is something, as the agenda item notes, this is something that is not included in the current year budget. And so the proposal to fund it would be to do so out of fund balance. And my thought about that, we actually, I talked with Brady yesterday, and he kindly provided some updated figures on what our fund balance is. And so, you know, we do have, first of all, we have been, the last couple of years, setting aside money in a capital reserve fund for building projects and for planning efforts like this one. We do have sufficient funding in the general fund balance to cover this. There would also be an option to look at fund balances in other areas like highway or PHHS to help defray the cost.
So I would recommend that perhaps we don't look at a department when looking at these funds, that we look at our more general funds, capital reserves. That's just my thought. Other commissioners? Commissioner Swanson?
Well, I think that the way I'm hearing this is you can take it from the general fund if you find a need downstream that needs to have funds moved, then this board can review that, taking some, whether it is from Highway Department, whether it's PHSS or anyone else. I mean, that's within this board's capability to make those decisions of where that comes from. So really the thought today is to make sure the public is fully aware this is coming from a general fund, right? And then as we're going, if we get counsel from Brady or somebody else that maybe we need to move some from one area to another, we can certainly do that at any time. As long as we know today that the funds are there that allow us to go forward and do this. With this, I agree with you wholeheartedly that when you look longer term, this is an investment that will save the county a lot of money going forward.
Yeah.
Certainly pay for itself.
The other thing to make very clear is using fund balance means that there will be no impact on the levy.
Correct.
Moving forward. And that's something, having recently been involved in some online discussions about this topic, not with complete success, but I think it was a net plus generally. By using fund balance, we are using funds that we already have.
Right.
And there is not going to be a need to levy additional taxes to pay for this. And so that's very important. And again, this was an anticipated expense. We didn't put it in the budget because we didn't know what the amount was going to be. And as the bids that we received demonstrate, there was quite a range. And so, we knew this was coming. We knew we had the funds in the fund balance to pay for it. And again, I think it's a wise investment to make.
Yep. Previous administrations have been looking forward and investing and saving the money for this. It's the public's money. I hope they realize we're spending it wisely, looking to the future and looking to the benefit of the county. That's how I look at what we're doing today.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, it's one pot of money, whether it comes out
In
of
the end.
this. But I think as far as optics go, I was like wanting to use some of, maybe 50,000 from highway, 50,000 from public health, balance from our building fund, whatever, just to show that those buildings are putting in some money too. but you're right. In the end, it's the same money, but as long as we remember that fund, because there are large fund balances
Yep.
in both of those other funds.
That's true.
And we have that option to use them going ahead. We just want to make sure that it gets stated, and it doesn't necessarily mean we can't touch those
Oh, it does
later.
not.
Yeah.
Right, right.
It's up to the board members.
Right.
Yep.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I was thinking, similar to Commissioner Hawkins, that we could tap into department funds, and then I was thinking, and it is all this, it all is from the taxpayers, but then I was also thinking that, and maybe this is where you're coming from, Commissioner Sullivan, was that just those, each department is kind of thinking they got that in reserves, and they're planning because of those reserves, and so I don't want to hamstring any department.
That's
in the
really how
planning.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
because we're already starting to think and prepare for our budgets for 2023.
Mhm.
And so, in this fashion, we're not going to impact that plan.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. So is that a decision we need to make today? Which, if it comes from other reserves
We
besides the
could
general?
make it as part of the authorization, that it come from the general fund balance.
And how does that sit with other commissioners?
I don't feel that that hinders anything, just as I stated, because it's all
Sure.
It's always-
within the ability of the.
Yeah, we need to
move
tap, I
things.
see what you're
If
saying.
we find
Yeah.
downstream that by paying that larger amount out of that general fund, and then a need comes up, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to reach into any of the others for an immediate need that we needed, that needed to be taken care of at that time.
Thank you for
All right.
reiterating that. I was processing while you were saying
Yeah,
it
and
the first time.
I appreciate if you're in a budget planning process, the departments need to know if they have fund balances that you plan on taking some. But I think they would also recognize that if some large need revealed itself that we had not planned on, we're going to take care of the money from wherever we need to take that money from to deal with that immediate need. That's just how you have to do business to keep going.
Well, we also have the capital reserve fund, so that money right now, is that more or less than the general fund?
Oh, much less.
Much less.
Yeah, we just started that, and we had such a backlog of projects in the building fund, we spent some of what we were intending to reserve
Okay.
the first 2 years.
So
And
we-
that's part of what we're looking
Yeah.
at, trying to get the whole
Yeah.
thing out in front of us.
Right, right,
I
yeah.
knew when that money was being put in, it'd get eaten up pretty fast. Your best ideas of what you want to do, and it's a great way to start to build on it, but yeah.
It probably would look good if we said, I don't know, is there 20,000 in there? You mean a lot less, or
Oh.
100,000, or
No, it's
pretty small?
something in the 300 range.
Yeah. So if we could use some of that rather than none of it, because it is a capital reserve fund. So, I think we're just going to have to wait and see how much we need and,
Yeah.
Okay.
where it all falls in line with the research that's going to happen.
A really good discussion.
I think for today's discussion, approving, based on the review, from our county attorney, contingent on that proper review, then
Sure.
being able to move forward is the most important thing, and then we can sit back and look and say, how do we want to, if we need to shuffle things around to level it up, or if we feel there's a need there. I'm not sensing a dire need there, otherwise our auditor would speak to us.
No, either method, any method spoken of works, so.
So just in terms of process, then we would have, there would be an agenda item on a future meeting for you all to make the determination where those funds are going to come from, or what do we need to do to enable that?
Can we just make it part of our motion today?
Certainly could.
So then I would look for a motion to authorize Administrator Yorkie to execute the contract for CRBPS for $1,400 out of the general fund balance. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Solis, and we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on my part of the agenda is to set a public hearing regarding updates to the county tobacco ordinance. This is in regard to information that you received at a recent Committee of the Whole meeting. And Commissioner Sullivan, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
Well, we've certainly had some discussion, and Attorney Hicken has been working with Taylor Blakeman to kind of finalize everything, so we're in good shape to move forward and clarifying language. And so we are at the point, in order to change or amend any ordinance, we have to have a public hearing. So this is by statute that we need to do so. Any questions or comments?
So is the new language, is it finished? Is it ready for us to make public? Or is
Attorney.
Yeah, for the most part, it is ready. There is one small change that we probably need to make the ordinance enforceable. This board had a discussion at the Committee of the Whole related to some language which is in the exceptions section of the proposed ordinance, which appears to provide an exception when I don't think that's what's intended. But I've had trouble getting in touch with the Public Health Law Center, yes, PHLC. Because I think I generally agree with the commissioners, seeing myself trying to enforce this ordinance with that exception in place. It's just going to require a tweak of language. And so I think for purposes of setting the public hearing, you can do that today. We need to publish the draft proposed ordinance. If these changes aren't made by the time we need to publish that proposed draft ordinance, I think it's okay to publish it as is, and then make it clear that that language has been tweaked when we come to the public hearing. You're not approving the form of the ordinance. You're simply setting it for a public hearing. You're anticipating additional discussion on your part in the community. There could be other changes that you decide to make after that public hearing. So I hope that explains the process.
Commissioner Solis?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. It would seem like I recognize what the intent was for adding the language, in ceremonial tobacco. It seems that we've gotten tripped up because of how it was placed in. Just in a process-wise, by putting it under an exception, it certainly does appear that it's allowing an exception on purchase, because that's the whole purpose of the ordinance. So if we could move that, or not somehow clarify this does not provide that, it was just an educational and, culturally educational piece for people to understand. But yeah, a good thing we're trying to do that got us kind of tripped up.
And I have an idea of how to do that, but
Great.
I don't want to stick it in there until I talk to PHLC about what their thoughts
I always
are.
appreciate your caution on those.
So, but if you want the current draft shared with you, Commissioner Hawkins, I can send it to you.
That'd be great, just to review it one way.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have it from before, don't I?
Yeah. All right. So is there a motion to approve the public hearing?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Solison. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support for setting a hearing for 9 a.m. on Tuesday, May 24th for our county tobacco ordinance. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All righty. Just a couple other things today. Just wanted to let you know that we are moving forward with the classification and compensation study. Had the first meeting of our steering committee last week. That committee consists of members of the 3 collective bargaining units. We also have supervisors, department directors, and a county commissioner on that group. And Commissioner Mills is your representative in that body. And the bulk of the discussion last week focused on kind of how we're going to go about selecting comparables. So in other words, what are we using to measure our pay scale, which is really the crux of the whole exercise. And so a lot of really vigorous discussion about that, a lot of great suggestions. We are going to be looking at other counties that are like Cook County, which there aren't any. But the goal is to kind of try to find some that have similar characteristics. And then we'll probably also, well, we definitely will be looking at some of our neighbors, including, excuse me, including Lake County, possibly St. Louis and Duluth, since those are markets that draw from our employee base or could. Excuse me. I should just mention my allergies have flared up a little bit, so. And then also looking at the private sector a little bit. Obviously, we compete with local employers in the private sector, so looking at what they're paying currently will have an influence on how things stack up. So more to come on that. And again, as I mentioned with the capital improvement plan development process, I want to make sure that there are opportunities for frequent updates. We'll be discussing the status of that study here at board meetings so that the public is aware of where we are in that work. And also the employee engagement piece of this is super important because, this is another thing where the last time we did this, there wasn't a lot of information sharing going on. And I think to get staff buy-in and to serve the public well, it needs to be a very transparent process. And so that's really the way that we're going to be doing this, and I will be coming back to you all with frequent updates on where we are in that work.
Commissioner Swanson.
To your point, on comparables, it's not as difficult as it seems because it's like whether you're doing it through real estate or any other transactional type of thing that you're looking at it, you may not find a county that mirrors us exactly, because if you just go with population, you may end up with someone on another area of the state that doesn't have the same economy base that we do.
For sure.
Right? And so there's always going to be differences, and some people will point, they say, the population, the this, the that, the something else, and none of it will be a perfect fit. What's important with the comparable is that you recognize the differences and you compensate effectively for that, right? You call that out so that everyone that's in the review process recognizes why you chose this and what aspects you're looking at it, and then, how you're looking at the differences and factoring that into your final analysis for whatever that is. And to me, because otherwise you will always have people, pointing at this is different and this is different and why did you pick this one?
Right.
As long as you can detail that and say, here's why we picked it, because these are the things that line up, these are the parts that don't, that we won't be factoring into in our analysis. I think that's how you start to get to that space, knowing that there will still be some saying, that's ridiculous that you chose that one.
Yeah, and it's easy. I mean, if my goal were to pay employees as little as we could pay them, it would be easy to cherry pick counties and data to support an argument for having low pay.
Right.
That's not my goal.
No.
My goal is to make sure that that we are competitive in attracting qualified employees to employment with the county. And that requires that we have a pay structure that is fair, and also that enables people to live in Cook County, which at the end of the road, as we are, 2 hours out of Duluth, we have some cost differentials that people elsewhere in the state don't deal with. So that needs to be a factor in our discussion as well. But the goal is really to end up in a place where we have a pay structure that is fair, that allows us to not only attract, but retain good employees. We've talked a lot about how we've had so much turnover, as many organizations have had in the last year plus. And that kind of turnover is costly in all kinds of ways.
Yep.
So being competitive and being fair in the way that we pay folks really creates an environment where we can be a healthy, high-performing organization. And that's my goal. So it's going to be a vigorous discussion, I'm sure. And you're right, Commissioner Swalson, people are not going to agree completely on where we end up. Nobody's going to be completely happy. But if we can come to consensus on the comps to use, we're going to be in a good place.
Yep.
So, and I'm confident we can get there.
That's the start you have to have before you can work together effectively to.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Mills.
So in that group, it's a wonderful group, by the way, but in the group discussion,
Because you're on it.
it doesn't hurt.
Sorry. Go
We're
on.
live.
Yeah, we are live.
Always. In the group discussion, each member was going to go back to their respective groups and ask, try to kind of fish for comparables. And I realized I can't do that unless we're in an open meeting here. And so I felt kind of stupid offering that up after I did. But we're in an open meeting, and so this is putting you on the spot. I have no expectations, but if you have suggestions for either other counties or other cities as comparables, they don't have to be perfect, as Commissioner Swalson pointed out, ideally within the state of Minnesota, because that's who DDA really has the best data on with comparing, and that's, state taxes are a huge factor in all of this too. It would be really helpful, or things to compare, whether that be population or median home values or whatever, education level, just if you have suggestions right now, it's awesome because we're in an open meeting. But it would be good to get that feedback too. Otherwise, it's just me and what I think, which I try to have a balanced, thing, perspective on what we select. But we're going to be relying on employees a lot for some of those comparables. And I think that preliminary discussion was really valuable and worthwhile already, just about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Tax capacity was talked about as a comparable. And really, I think what the group had, I'd say a soft consensus is just cost of living, which includes housing costs. And so trying to really get a handle on that, if we can find, similar areas with that. But it's so strange because when you have similar areas to cost of living and housing, you get into much higher populations generally. And it's just, you can't have those high budgets for such a small community compared to those higher population areas. So it gets really tricky, but that's my soft ask here. And I guess probably the most appropriate thing is if you have some itching feedback, to pass it on to Administrator Yorkie rather than me, just so we're legit. But I'll do my darndest.
Thank you.
And I want to echo Commissioner Mills' comment. It is a really great group, and we've had some really great feedback from folks already. And so I feel really good about this process, and I feel like we're going to end up in a really good place.
Good.
Excellent. All right. Any other
Okay.
updates?
One more thing. At next week's Committee of the Whole meeting, I'm planning to present some information about our fleet, which there have been requests from departments regarding the need for new vehicles, which I have put the brakes on, no pun intended, until we have a chance to kind of bring the bigger picture into focus. We do have, I think, 17 vehicles right now, which prior to the pandemic were pretty heavily used. Since the pandemic started and we went to primarily or exclusively for a time virtual meetings, those vehicles have not been used nearly as much. And so there's a question about what is the right size of fleet to have right now. Presumably, well, not presumably, we know that we're continuing to use virtual meetings as a way of getting business done. So the need to go to Duluth for a meeting or down to the cities is less than it used to be. So there's a lot that's going to go into this discussion. What I plan to present next week will be kind of a mileage accrual history for the last 4 years. That's as far back as we have really good data. And to talk about the age of our fleet, vehicle retirements. We talked at the last meeting about the need for a courtesy car up at the airport, which I think we can easily accommodate. But the question is, for vehicle needs moving forward, what is the best approach? In the past, we've always just bought vehicles as we've needed them. The sheriff's office has gone to a lease arrangement with Enterprise, which they're very happy with and which they say has reduced their costs. So that could be an option for the rest of our fleet as well, but I'm not in a place to say that's what we should do yet. I think right now it's just collecting the information to see how much are we using our vehicles currently, what does the size and vehicle composition need to be, right? Because we have, for example, a lot of departments, the assessor's office, land services, they have to go off-road, in many cases to assess a property. And you can't do that with a Toyota Prius. As
I can attest to that.
Commissioner Sullivan can attest. There's a need for some sort of specialty vehicles, four-wheel drive, off-road with higher clearance. We do have some Ford Escapes, for example. Depending on the age of the Escapes, I think the newer ones sit lower than the older ones do. And so, those kinds of considerations will be a factor in what recommendations may come out of this. But again, the first step is just to look at the big picture, see where we are. Prior to next Tuesday, I will be talking to Enterprise to just touch base and get some information from them to kind of paint a picture of how that could look. Again, I'm not sold on the idea that we should be leasing our vehicles, but it is an option that needs to be considered. So, and those are the biggies. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, thank you, Minister Yorkie. I did have a question coming from the Parks and Trails Commission just about where that joint powers agreement is at. If there's been any progress there. There's a lot of interest from the commission, and any updates?
I don't have anything current to share on that yet. We have been having discussions recently with the city on city-county service agreements. And it's really opened a larger discussion about the whole relationship between the city and the county and how we can best work together. But there hasn't been movement on that agreement. But at the next meeting, I will plan to report on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I understand the interest too. So I know it's out there.
Anything else? Commissioner
Oh,
Mills.
no, I'll save it for commissioner reports. Thank you. No, my mind gets going.
All right. We'll move on to employee concerns or commissioner concerns, reports or updates. Or anyone? Commissioner Svalison.
So Thursday is the bike rodeo
Yeah.
up at the community center on Thursday. And one that I was going to give a heads up on June 11th, Saturday, June 11th, at Kimball Lake. The Aquatic Invasive Species Group will be hosting the Take a Kid Fishing Day. So looking for some volunteers to assist with that. I'll be there that day, and hope others will join.
All right. Sounds good. Other commissioners? Commissioner
Well,
Mills.
yes, this is more appropriate for my other hand raising. I guess and maybe could have been an administrative updates. I was just wondering if there's been any further discussions around the childcare front as far as the county is concerned or public health is concerned. If so, great. I'd like to hear more about them. If not, I I would like us to get a little more aggressive with that, and start leading the charge there, because this is something that's really inhibiting our county's families and employers, and it's just the next pressing thing, the current pressing thing. So
I know it is something that the EDA has discussed
Okay.
and brought up.
Okay.
Beth has been very awesome in just providing us with updates and kind of networking with other people. So I know that the EDA is very aware of that and keeping it on their radar.
yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Do you feel like it's the case that the EDA is part of that developing an action plan?
I wouldn't say that there's an action plan. Generally, people approach the EDA with an idea, but there's been a lot of discussion, not only in the EDA, but with the HRA, about recognition that this all goes together. It's economic development, it's housing, and it's childcare, that those are the three legs of the stool we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and I did have just a brief back and forth with Jason Hale about it, and he recognizes the importance of it, and has seen other communities deal with it in different ways. So I have a follow-up conversation to have with him yet. But it was really exciting just to hear that perspective and recognition, like this is a pressing issue here, and it is all related. So, but as far as any of our departments working on it directly, that's not the case at this point.
Not at this point in
No.
time.
Okay.
At least I haven't had any
Yep.
recent conversations with Public Health and Human Services.
Yep. Thank you.
But
Commissioner
we-
Stroh.
I was going to say, we can certainly move that up on the priority list. I realize that their time is of the essence.
I did have a chance to speak to someone this weekend who very encouragingly said there's a large corporation that's going to be contributing money for childcare. So I think we have to wait until we get all the pieces of the puzzle put together, and then how is that going to be used? Through EDA, not through the county, but through a source. And once that gets rolling, then we can be a part of the discussion of the needs here for, just not only county-wise, but, employees that work for the county. Yeah, so it's out there. It's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason that I wanted to bring it up again is just because we need to plan for it. I don't know what the best vehicle will be. I think the EDA could be it could be the best vehicle. I don't know. I also had brought up in the past the idea of the public health fund as a vehicle. And so I just want to make sure we're not losing sight of this target and that we are moving in the right direction. I just didn't know how much appetite there was on the board at really pushing this, and or what our thoughts were on the proper vehicle, and or the level of urgency. So it is encouraging to hear that there are private entities recognizing this as well, and I'm hoping we can collaborate. I just want to make sure it's of public benefit. There is risk when it's just private. So.
Absolutely. All right. Other commissioner updates or remarks? Commissioner
I
Hawkins?
guess I report that we had a really good HRA training gathering
Yeah.
last week, and I am just very excited about the work that group is going to be doing, and it was good to get to know some of the commissioners of the HRA board a little more personably instead of just during a meeting. So I think we had a good work session, and I look forward to what's going to happen next.
I agree, and I left a packet for each commissioner, which is just a collection of the materials that were shared at that meeting, just so you can review that and know what resources were shared at that meeting as well. Other commissioners?
Here's a funny question. Are you excited about it?
Oh, yes, I forgot to start that way. Yes, I'm excited.
Good.
Well, and on that note, I'm really excited. Yesterday, I had a chance to participate in my third meeting with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency as we're looking at the Devil Track watershed.
Oh.
And I am I'm sitting back and observing the process for developing a plan to take 319 funds, which are federal funds that are for small watersheds, to make improvements. And I just want to thank Phil Larson and Elena Hansel for their work with the MPCA. They're just putting together a plan. Obviously, it needs approval, and there's, the state and the federal level. It's in the initial stages, but there's such good work being done. And excites me to see the collaboration between all these different entities. So just a shout out to the two of them. Other items? All right, well, we have some meetings coming up very quickly. June 2nd, our AMC district meeting in St. Louis County, and the Arrowhead Regional Corrections meeting, which will be here on June 17th in the morning. Our Board of Appeals and Equalization, I'm sure, will be a exciting meeting. I'm really excited about that on June 23rd. And then we have our lodging tax comparison, which was shared with us. And then very importantly, our recognition of staff. So we have some May anniversaries. Troy Olm from Maintenance, 7 years. Will Sandstrom at the Sheriff's Office, 21 years. Sarah Hadley from PHHS, 8 years. Greg Thompson from the Highway Department, 36 years. Rusty Johnson, Highway Department, 26 years. Kyle Oberg, MIS, 17. Elena Hansel, Soil and Water Conservation District, 11 years. Leif Lundy from the Sheriff's Department, 24 years. Jason Hughes, also from the Sheriff's Office, 7 years. Allison Plummer, PHHS, 16. And Darcy Ziller from the Sheriff's Office, 24 years. So some employees who have stuck with us through thick and thin, and we really appreciate their commitment to Cook County. And then we have a milestone anniversary, Paul Spry at the Sheriff's Office, 20 years. And some exciting new hires, Tia Parks, our Highway Environmental Specialist, Rory Anderson, Soil and Water Conservation District, District Administrator, stepping in for Teresa Oberg. Abby Benusa, PHHS, Mental Health Worker, and then an exciting promotion, Jesse Backstrom, to the Highway Maintenance Supervisor. So lots of good news. And any other items for the good of the order? If not, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Spallison. Is there support?
Support?
All right, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
We'll start signing.
Yeah, we'll start.